to have an opportunity to share something that is so important to me, and it's painting. And so today I wanted to demonstrate some of the different techniques that I use in my paintings, which consist of splattering and pouring of paints and however I want, to get the paint on the paper. It's a great way for me to get a depth of field, where we're dealing in two dimensionals, lots of subtle variations, and I just like to let the watercolor paint do its own magic without a lot of interruption. Most of my paintings will begin with a photograph. And when I go and visit with family members in Miami, the first thing I seem to do is go out to the balcony and I see this wonderful marina. Where in all of the chaos that happens, and for those of you who are boaters, you're always kind of subject to weather and winds and things. So to find this safe haven is just really attractive to me. I've been in quite a few storms. And so the first thing I do is I look at the boats. I took a photo, I enlarged it for you to see, and I wanted it to be a big painting. So, first thing I want to do is I want to see what the gray scales are. And I felt like I had enough variations that the painting would hold. Of course, being a sailor, I had to throw in a few sailboats. So I decided, well, maybe I would do it as what I call a diptych in 2 panels. And deciding on that, I just didn't really feel like it was strong enough. I thought the piece on the right was really strong, but the one on the left did not really hold it for me. So then I attempted 5 panels, make it really big. And I immediately did not like cutting a building in half. It was like, that was out, okay. 4 panels. I didn't like the middle panel. So that was and I ended up deciding on a triptych. And I do a lot of big paintings, triptychs in particular. I've done paintings with 5 panels. The largest that I've done to date is 8 panels, and it's 24 feet across. Wow. And I'm very happy to say it's sold. So that's part of the other thing that I have found is that in the area where I am, your area may be different, that large paintings really fill a space, and it gives me an opportunity to get into galleries where they have big oil paintings and acrylic paintings, and buyers seem to like them. So that's kind of the thing. What I'm leery about with triptychs and telling you in painting large is to be conscious and give some consideration to your framing part. And I was talking last night with Robin about, having it in one piece, in one frame. Well, that's very nice. This particular painting that we're going to work on today is, once it's framed, and I'm thinking a 3-inch mat, maybe a 1-inch frame, it's going to be 8 feet. That's not going to fit in my car. So when I start thinking logistics, that I would have to rent a vehicle, could I put it in a gallery or not? So that's one of the reasons for, again, breaking up the image. It allows me to get the paper, the mat board, the plexiglass, and so all of those things are in consideration. I'm a value painter. I think that is just so critical. So typically in the workshop, or if you're just doing, a few days, I'll look at doing things in 4 layers or 4 values. This particular painting, I have 8 different values, and I do have some handouts, and I'll put them up here for after the session. And I also, if I don't have, and I know I don't have enough if I have the business card and some information. If you just send me a quick line, I'll send you a PDF with it. I also know that we don't typically see, we see color, but we don't see grayscale. So I love this little handy viewer. They're inexpensive, they're like $11. And it lets me see, oh, look at all the values here. I would be happy to pass it around to have you take a look at it. Can I get an idea of you, if you don't mind my asking? I see a lot of faces I recognize, people who have painted longer than I have. But can I get an idea of who's been painting, let's say, 2 years or less? Oh, you have such a wonderful journey. How about 5 years? 5 to 10 years? Over 15 years? Over 20 years? I'm sorry, I have to keep my jaw up here. Would any one of you like to come up here and do the demo? That's a lot of knowledge. So I'm going to try to do a cross blend here so that I'm not talking above or beneath someone. One of the things I do want to mention about the triptych that was really exciting for me this particular exhibition, I'm always humbled to get in the show. Oh my gosh. The competition in Florida is incredible. And so for this year's exhibition, I entered the middle panel. And so I'm thrilled that it got in. Beyond words that I'm getting an award, because in my eye, I see all three, okay? And so it's just to let you know that if you're doing a large panel, not to think that it's automatically, you can't enter it into an exhibition. I might even consider the first panel someday for an exhibition. So just kind of keep that in mind. I use posterizing for my paintings. You can do that in Photoshop, Microsoft Office. There's some apps today. There's so many different ways of doing it. And because I do marine, boats have hard edges. And so I like that shine that you will have. So let me start with the first panel. So this, let's see what you see. This is going to be the first panel that I'm going to work on. First thing that I've done is I've masked out all of the white for the paper. And just so that you can really see that, that's what it looks like. And I want to take a few minutes and talk about masking fluid because it has kind of a bad rap. There are some real tips in using it. I use the large bottle, which I keep in my refrigerator, tight, upside down. I do not shake it, no air bubbles. Then I transfer it to this. And from here, for today, I'll just put a little bit in my working cup. And part of the reason for this is I do spill. And I don't want to spill a lot. I don't want to get it on my clothes. And this is a nice working level. It doesn't ruin the brush. The brushes that I use for masking are Cheap Joe's. I'm not quite sure why he calls them ugly brushes, because they're really kind of nice. But that you can buy them a dozen. They run, if you buy it by 12, is like $1.49. So I think of them as disposable. I use typically a number 2 and a number 6. In traveling, I typically use a liquid, but in traveling overseas and stuff, I found that the less liquids, the better. So I've started using just a bar of soap that I put in a container, and I spritzed it a little bit before coming in here. And so I just want to take a second, show you. I'll wipe it off, dip it in. I can get really fine lines. There are a lot of artists who use the back of a brush. They'll use one of the needles for putting it on. I haven't found I needed to do that because this works really well for me. The only thing with masking is that you need to let it set up for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You really do want to make sure that it's dry.
Judy, you're using PBO masking? PBO?
Sure.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And once I start to feel it pull on the brush, I'll clean it. Since that's all I'm going to do on this one, clean it again. And most of the time I can get through an entire painting without having to replace the brush. Because I use a lot of water in my paintings, or a boat that has splash, I will either hand paint all the whites, trying to see if that's on there, or I'll use another technique. I have these in all different sizes.
Judy, what kind of
I
soap
use,
is
the
it?
masking I use, thank you, is Pepco,
PBO?
PBO, thank you. I've used all sorts. I really do like the invisible. The problem is after 4 layers, it is invisible, and I don't know where I'm going.
And what about the soap?
Some hotel soap. So I know there's some birds in here, so, oops, wrong thing. I'm just gonna see if this works.
Judy, are you blowing into that?
I'm just blowing air in a straw
Okay.
and into this
That's
little
like a kitchen strainer?
I have about 4 or 5 different sizes, and they work really nicely. And so I have one here that's kind of what I call a blob. I would let that dry and then remove it.
One of the members asked, how did you blow it in with the strainer?
So I just put the masking fluid in the strainer, and any kind of a straw that you have, I just lightly blow, and it comes out the other end.
And what
Okay.
effect are you getting?
Since I really do need to
Judy?
wait on the masking fluid,
We
What
have another
effect do you
question
get?
of what effect do you get from that?
I'll get like an airbrush effect. And so I'll get little white bubbles. In my marine paintings, I'll get what's kind of like the splash on the water, you know, against a boat. Here's a giclée of one of my paintings. And you'll see all the white splatter. Now you can hand paint that, or you can go ahead and, you know, use a screen. The other way, if you don't have that, you could also dip a toothbrush in and just splatter. I have found for myself, I have the little strainer. I also just, because this ages very quickly, gets lumps, I will pour it through the strainer and then pour the good stuff back in here and get rid of the bad. So I use it a couple of different ways. I'll paint the masking fluid on the sponge and use it. Matter of fact, I did that on a texture. I think a lot of people are familiar, thank you, with my Renaissance series. I know this has some reflection, and that was done with a sponge. with some masking. Masking and what I call resist has been around for a long time. I think one of the earliest was Sargent with white sails, and he was done with a masking fluid. Any more questions on the masking? So I'm not going to go work on that painting, as I said, because the masking really does need to dry. Not sure what you can see. So the first panel that I showed you, all of this turquoise was the white, and I masked it. Now, I wouldn't do this if I'm painting at home. This was really so that I can kind of show you what my process is and how I go into the layers.
Thank you.
I ran my first bit of paint on the panel. So now we're looking at this panel, which is here. And very little paint is going to go on for the next layer. I want it to be very subtle. This is a huge marina, has over 100 boats. And so to get that depth of field, I want to make sure that I do it in subtle layers.
So the blue that we're seeing at the top and throughout,
I've masked that.
that is the masking
Mhm.
fluid or the paint? That's the masking.
So, yes, so I did have it
Okay.
as a sky, and so I did mask that. I put some tape so you don't have to use
Yeah.
so much masking. So I have new brushes from Silver Brush, and they are in the demo room if you have a chance to see them. Nice people. So I'm just going to use some clear water. And again, I'm not looking to get a lot of paint on here. I think one of the reasons I do like to do it this way, it's really fun. And I do a lot of planning ahead of time so that in this stage, I can just let the watercolor painting do its own thing. I'm going to give that a second or two. Can you see my paints over here? Okay.
What's your favorite choice?
How about that?
What's your favorite choice of
Paper.
paper?
Thank you. I use 140 Archers cold press. It's the workhorse, and because we live in Florida, it's very humid. I need to let this set up overnight typically. I can use a hair dryer, but it just makes removing the masking a little more difficult. And so I choose the 140, and
Do you stretch it?
I do stretch my paper. 300, you don't need to do that, but on this 140, it would be warping. It also, because I travel, and it makes it easier to travel. So after I've drawn the paint, the picture, artwork, and I use a grid and Velcro paper, and then I use a light box to transfer the paint, the drawing onto watercolor paper, which is really helpful because I'm going to show you several panels and not having to reproduce it each time. Okay, so the paints that I use are kind of a cross between, I'm not overly picky. When I'm traveling, I'll usually have tubes. I'll mark them non-toxic for the airlines, and I just make sure they're not a full tube because it'll expand in the airplane. For this particular painting, I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to use burnt sienna, and then some verdita blue. Maybe I'll throw in some other tones as we're going, we'll just see. Let's see.
So does this have any paint on it yet? No paint on it, okay.
I'm sorry, now this has one layer of paint.
It does.
It does. Has one layer of paint, and I have masked over that one layer. I have masked the blue over the first panel.
Here's the paint.
Actually, I'm going to start because the background does have some blue, so I'm just going to start at the top. I use eyedroppers, pipettes, whatever it will take to move the paint. I spritz. I mixed the paint yesterday, so I see it's a little strong. I know that these two colors make a very nice gray tone. If things don't move quite fast enough for me, because I do have the masking, I don't object to using my finger. If I'm not happy with something like too much of one color, I can just spray it off. And I know, of course, it's going to dry much lighter.
What color blue was that? Was it?
That was verdant blue, and that's a Holbein. But the burnt sienna I typically will use is Daniel Smith, because when I'm doing portraits, Daniel Smith's doesn't have as much granulation as some of the others. I don't typically for this use a lot of Winsor Newton, only because they're kind of expensive. But I think that you just kind of experiment, and one of the ways I do that is I'll just make a box, put the, wet it, put the colors on, and just move it around and see if I like it. Okay, so I think I'm going to scoot a little bit of cobalt. If you're looking for subject matters, I highly recommend Marina's. The reflections in water are pretty amazing. There are lots of windows. Do I have any boaters here? Oh, okay. So those outriggers and stuff will be a little difficult to get color around. Just to have some play in color, I have a touch of mineral violet here, and so I'll just maybe tap some.
What brand of that do you use? What brand of mineral violet is that?
Great.
Holbein?
I have no idea.
It's one of them.
I could make something up.
It's Hotel Soap.
Whatever one you like.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Sometimes the panels go 1, 2, 3. Other times you have to kind of work them.
Catherine.
Okay, Judy, We had a question from the back. Are you thinking cool and warm colors when you're painting?
You know, to be honest with you, I'm not. I'm just thinking a light color at this point. I think intuitively, I know that. I know that boats and marine is typically cool. And so one of the reasons that I added the mineral violet was to add a little bit of warmth to it. Because in the layers that I'm going to add in the future onto this, I will have that. I will have the warms and cools. What I do think about is triangles of color. So let's just get some more paint down here.
Are you using a liquid paint, or did you just dilute it so much that you're using a drop?
Are you using a liquid paint, or did you dilute the paint from the tube?
So yesterday I went ahead and just put like a toothpaste amount that you would put on your toothbrush in here and mixed it with water. I don't typically change the thickness of it, you know, so people think of it as, you know, tea or cream. I'll adjust that by the water amount that I put on here. And I see this is having just a little issue in moving, so trying to be mindful of our time today. I'm just going to give some assistance. And because I know the bottom has some green in it, I'll throw some Quinn Gold, which I know is a Daniel Smith.
And right now, Judy, you have 25 minutes. You have 25 minutes. 25 minutes. Yeah.
So let me just throw a little more in there. By the way, I see Karen is here. For those of you, she's doing a demo this afternoon, right?
Yes, 1:30.
So I'm going to try to keep this area pretty neat. So that's a little thick there. Let me move it around a little bit and we'll get on to the next panel. So as I said, I do have these set up for overnight. One of the reasons, again, that I like working in a triptych or more than one panel at a time, that I will let it set up overnight and have something else to work with. So that's pretty juicy in some areas.
Judy, since you're doing a triptych and you've got the color that flows from one panel to another, do you do like the panels together, like one right after another, or you do each one individually?
It depends, a great question. And I would say it really depends on the panel, what I'm painting. When I was doing the panel that was 24 feet, I had what I call a ribbon of color. And so I pre-mixed that to make sure that by the time I got to the 8th panel, that I still had some of the same colors and things to it. What I did discover, or I should say, I at that time was working, because I had gator board that was 3 feet by 4 feet, which is the size of the paper, and I had 3 of them. So I did 3 panels, then the next 3 panels, and then the last 2. So here's that piece, remass, dry and remass. Okay. Let's see if I know where I'm going. I'm going to try to do this one very quickly, but I want to get to the next panel. So for this piece, I really have very little that I'm going to come in, just on the top. And let's just see if this one runs a little smoother.
So you remasked areas that had another layer of paint on, but you wanted a different value, you wanted to protect that value? So-
Yes.
Okay.
No issues with paint coming up when you take the masking off?
A little bit. Matter of fact, thank you for asking the question, because as one of the tips, if you're, on a painting, and let's say when you're sitting back and you're critiquing it, maybe, are you done? I think we all ask that question, is it done? And you say, oh, I have an area that I think is too dark. You can actually use the masking and put it on that section and then remove it ever so slightly. Okay, so I'm just getting more of the background here, which is the trees, kind of an autumn color. By the way, I use the pipettes for, again, more than just for the painting. Have you ever been mixing a color on your palette and you need more water? But you have all that paint on your brush, so you don't really want to rinse it. You can just take your pipette and add water to it. So there are lots of artists that use resist. And resist can be masking fluid, it can be wax, crayons. As I already mentioned, John Singer Sargent, has used masking. Henry Moore, Paul Klee, and some of our more contemporary artists, which you might know, Jean Grastoff, who is a master of it, Annie McCartney out of Canada, Linda Baker. Some of you know these artists. They all use it in a slightly different way. Some of them will get more what I call just the primary, yellow, red, blue. And for me, that's a little too Easter egg, just those colors. I like to be more gray tones. Just lean and tip and see where it's gonna go. As you're running, again, on a big panel, I have a little more, how do I say it? I can do a little more direction. So since the trees go kind of an angle here into this laguna area, it would be nice to run the paint off that way.
Judy, how many layers do you
This particular painting is going to have 8. When I do a workshop, because of the time between the layers, I'll do 4. And it's really amazing. You can get incredible value changes and depth of field with just 4. Actually, some of my favorite paintings are those that I just do in grayscale, no color. And because I used that mineral violet before, maybe I'll throw a little in. I use another color, brown madder, which is a Holbein, which kind of gives a little sparkle. And just see if I can run this paint off. Again, I would save my masking or my fine brushes, excuse me, for detail work. Not so much for the pouring. So let me just move it around. Which is funny, I never liked playing with my fingers as a kid, but now I just find it so much fun. Okay, I'm gonna let this one go.
You have 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so as you can see, after it dried, and I added what I was painting in that picture, that painting here. Now I am ready to lay in some darks. And actually, just to make it a little more interesting, I have a different, the panel that's on the left side. So for this one, I'm going for a lot of darks. And let's see if I can do that quickly. And actually, you know what? I'm not even going to add so much water. So for this, primarily this layer, I'm going to use Quin Gold. I have indigo. Do you use indigo?
I love indigo.
And only because of our time, I'm just going to push it. So getting some really nice dark greens. Is this something you might like to try?
Yes.
Did you remask before this step? Did you remask before this step?
I did. I did remask before laying the next layer in. Thank you.
Did you use a sponge for some of the edges on masking?
You can use it a lot of different ways. You can use it for masking. You could use it for a color way of putting it in. You know, laying it and then letting it dry and then mask over it. Just.
I'm just looking at the shapes on the top right above the ships there. Was that done with the sponge?
Were the shapes above the ships done with a sponge?
No, that's just an earlier layer.
Okay.
That would have been, if you look at here, that would have been about layer 2, and they just got masked. So I kind of think of this as like a cooking show. And I appreciate your tolerance in my trying to show you the different ways. There's no way, in all fairness, that I could do a whole painting in this technique just because things have to dry. How am I doing on time?
You have, let me see, what's 3 less minutes. 12 minutes. You have 12 minutes.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get
You're
some.
doing well.
Okay. I hope everyone will have a chance to go see the show. It's really amazing. And I would say lights overhead play a little bit into this, and moving, but just to speed things along. And as you can tell, it doesn't really matter how I get the paint on. And again, just to be kind of consistent in what I've been doing, I'm gonna take a touch of that mineral violet. Not that it's really gonna show up at this point, but it's just a nice way. And a little bit of that mineral violet. And if I think I have too much, then I'll remove it. But I actually like that. And again, I'm going to try to pour off the balance of it at a little bit of an angle. Now for my very last layer, I'll probably use Payne's Gray with a little bit of the indigo, and just do the touch-up of the blacks. And that'll make for my darkest darks. I wanted to share with you a couple of things if I can. There were some incredible paintings. I mean, all of the paintings in the exhibition are outstanding, or they wouldn't have been accepted. But there were a couple of them that I think if they had gone maybe one more value, they would have been award winners. I have also seen where some incredible paintings like a portrait, where you're really engaged with the face, but when it came time to look at the background, it was kind of like an afterthought, and so you could mask and pour the background. I wanted to let you know on the very last panel when I was working it, I got a little confused. So if my lines disappear, I'll go back and draw them. I use a 2B pencil. And I decided to go ahead and paint some of my darkest darks on the boats so that I would be kind of leaving what I call breadcrumbs so that I could figure out where I was and what I was doing. So now that I have shown you how I build up these layers, I think it would be nice if I showed you, well, I think I have a second or two. I showed you this, so all of the masking, sorry, all of the background was done in layers. Then I hand painted. This one, all of the painting was done in this method of layers, no hand painting. On this particular painting, I'm hoping I just saved the fish and did the rest of it in layers. And again, when I was using the little strainer, you don't always have to do it on your first layer. You could do it later on.
How do you protect the main subject if you're not masking?
I'll mask it.
You'll mask it. the
Well,
whole
and I
thing.
say that.
But if it's
For
big-
this one, I just went around the edges.
but when you're pouring, how do you protect it from getting the paint on it? Careful.
In all fairness, sometimes it rolls, and I just dab it. It's not so critical. So I thought maybe you would like to see it finished. This is a G clay, wonderful resource. Oh, it looks like in travel, so I've got paint on it. Sorry.
Do you need help?
Want me to put the ending?
It's beautiful, just beautiful.
Do I have any questions? Or do you have questions, I should say?
What on that
What on that
there
did you?
can hand things?
Miguel from Artfinity does the G clays. This is a little bit smaller than the original.
She asked, what did you hand paint?
I'm here at hand paint the yellow boat. Because every time I go and look at this marina, I look to see where the yellow boat is. But everything else, I mean, I hand painted some of the blue, as I told you, and the black, so that I had kind of a guide. But everything else was poured. That was with the strainer.
Judy, what do you like to use to get, just a rubber square thing to get all that mask off?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure I could do these demos without your questions, so.
And she asked, how do you remove the rubber mask, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I happen to have a clean one, which is really nice. So I'll typically, like this one, where it's not quite dry, I can tell. I can just remove it. And I'll go in one direction.
Okay.
If I have a really dark area, I'll do the light first to remove it. Over the years, I've tried some different things. We talked about losing of color. Yellow is a color that in masking seems to disappear. So sometimes I'll go back and retouch it up. The other thing is, with all the masking, the fibers of your paper get matted down. So I have a painting just a couple of days ago. I felt like once I removed all the masking, it didn't have as much life to it as I expected. So I'm not brave enough to soak it in the tub yet, but I just spritzed the whole thing and let it sit, and it just bounced back. So that's my demo, and thank you.
Excellent. You're 5 minutes early.
Thank you.
So you sure there's no more questions?
I do have questions.
Yes.
In your workshop, will we be doing more than one painting because there'll be the drying time, or will?
So we won't be doing a diptych or a triptych during that. So we'll work on 1 or 2 paintings at that time.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And we'll have to dry them in between. Thank you. And images will be provided.
And you'll only do 4 layers rather than 8?
Yes.